These stories are not just concepts to me. These are my actual experiences. Like, this is my actual experience of how these things have affected my family, my sister, my mother, my grandmother, my ancestors, how all of these sorts of things have impacted the generations behind me and how they could impact the generations in front of me. Generations upon generations have experienced exactly what this story is talking about. What's up with it, y'all? My name is Trevor Went. I'm an experiential artist based in Chocolate City, Washington, D.C., and I make art to challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. And we are in episode 6 of the creative breakdown, there we go, of my series, Niggas in Nature, my latest joint. What I want to get at in this is that there are plenty of spaces on YouTube to talk about tech, to talk about specifics, to talk about specifications of a camera and this light and that light and how to do this and that and the third. But this is a space where I want to talk about creative inspiration, because where do we go for that? Because I want to talk about how do we create better stories? How do we create better art? How do we create better bodies of work? Because if you've been following my stuff for a while, you know that bodies of work matter to me. So that's what we talking about here. So let's chop it up about the emotional toll of telling stories that are personal to create something like this, to create a Niggas in Nature. Look, not everybody makes art that is rooted upon like their experiences and their culture and their life, like the socio-political structures and things like that impact their lives as well. There are plenty of people who make personal art, but yeah, there's just a depth that when you go into a space of vulnerability or you go to your own stories of the way that those sorts of things can show up. Now, I'm an experiential artist who makes art to challenge perspectives and give hope to the marginalized and oppressed. So I'm always addressing topics that are not only just addressing my own vulnerability, but then are pouring into the societal and political structures and how they've impacted our lives as Black people. And so when I'm doing the research on the National Park Services and the ways that my ancestors have been barred from these parks and have risked violence by white rangers as the Buffalo Soldiers in these National Park Services as National Park Rangers, and then how the Negro Motorist Green Book had to exist because they were trying to stay safe as they were traveling the country in any stretch. Like, all of this stuff isn't just a concept to me. This isn't just like, oh, that's distant history. I know well enough to know that this stuff is very close to us. It's not that far away. And so for me, it's like, how did this stuff actually impact my life? How do these things actually impact my experiences? There's a conversation at the beginning of this project before I ever got into the actual editing where I talked with my mom about her experience with the outside. And I talked about this in an earlier episode. And so she was breaking down to me the one park in her area that she was allowed to go and visit and how that was just her experience with outdoors. And then she carried that on, that same exact formula, even when she wasn't living in the South anymore, with my eldest sister. And that was my eldest sister's experience in the outdoors after that. And then my eldest sister kind of carried some of those same things with her as well. It was just a little bit of a different context with me and my siblings running around, my nephew. But with that, I'm literally watching this thing move through 3 generations of how it impacted our experiences outdoors and what it actually means. And then this is what folks mean when they say that the personal is political, because actual laws, actual societal norms, actual prejudice and systemic oppression established this stuff for us. Redlining, white flight, the GI Bill being relegated to white folks alone to get those sorts of grants, the Homestead Act, the grants that white folks got to go and inhabit the West. These things all impacted our experiences as Black people to experience these spaces. But so with these things that are so personal to me, I'm also talking about the grandiose, like I just said, redlining, white flight, the GI Bill, Homestead Act. These things are not just my experiences. These are Black experiences as well as a whole of what we've experienced in a systemic oppression standpoint, in the narratives that have been told to us standpoint. Like, folks understand the power of narratives. If they can shift cultural and public opinions and narratives on you, then it makes it much harder to overcome. And so then for me, it's understanding that this isn't just my story. So I position myself and Niggas in Nature from a pretty neutral perspective. It was, this is a framework that is similar and familiar to so many of us, if not all of us in some sort of form and fashion. Now, there is the caveat of, I start off the first episode with, nigga, ain't you almost get eaten by a bear once? Like, that's actually a story of mine. That's something that actually happened. And so that's an illusion. And there were small pieces where there were little instances of like, this is a little bit of my story, but the grandiose perspective was, this is a cultural norm story that we all know. If you a nigga, you know these stories, you know that statement, you know white people shit, you know the hesitancies towards the stuff. This ain't nothing new to us. And so there's a familiarity that I try to create within that. And so then when I can create that framework that's both honest to me and something that is nostalgic for us, then y'all are gonna be able to hear these things, relate to these things, experience these things, and to be able to draw yourself and see yourself in these narratives as well. So when it comes to the reactions of how people took this stuff in and how they responded to these things, like TikTok, there was a specific TikTok that went up. It was a carousel of images. It got, I think at this time, it's probably over 30,000 views and close to 7,000 likes. And it was a set of images that from Zion National Park that a lot of Black women really connected to, which is fitting because Black women are so often pioneering the next generations and the growth and the, path towards new life in our community. And so that was really dope to see. And then I had some homies hit me and talk about from so many different walks of life. I had folks from the streets who could understand what I was getting at. And I had like a particular homie from the streets who was talking like that. And then I had, some previous coworkers and stuff like that from different backgrounds, some with more connected African roots and others not so much, but all being able to relate to how that was connecting with them and, tell me that, the series is perfect. It's crazy seeing this come to life. I really get what you're saying. Like, this is really speaking to me. And so that was meaningful to me to see the tangible ways that it was showing up. I had some old homies hit me in the DMs about stuff, and even had, some of my white homies hit me up and recognize like, I know I'm not the target audience in this, but this is speaking to me. Like, this is, hitting me. And so that's the beauty of it. It's like, it doesn't necessarily need to be like, just because this is some Black stuff that you can't gain something from this. You don't always need to be the center of the narrative. Like, I like Toy Story, but Toy Story don't center no nigga. There's plenty of stuff that's gonna connect. I love anime. Anime is not about niggas, bruh. But it's the beauty of just seeing, experience, and being able to build your empathy and relate to stuff like that. And so these are all things that I'm thinking about in this project and stuff that really spoke to me, connected to me in creating it. And then also just there's the payoff when you are pouring yourself out emotionally to see how it emotionally connects to other people, because that's what you hope. You hope that these things, the vulnerability will translate into helping someone else or healing someone else or expanding someone's perspective. And so, I found a lot of joy in those glimpses and those moments. The reality of, if you take a position and you put yourself out there and you make yourself vulnerable, you're going to give yourself the opportunity to be misunderstood. But in the end, you just have to do your best and you have to be open to valid critique. You got to stand 10 toes down on the things that you know are real, that you know are facts, that you know are purposeful, you know are true. And so that's what I'm doing with the series. And emotionally, here's one other part to this. When you put yourself emotionally in something, man, it's like you have to try to prepare yourself to not get too high from the highs, like the praise, and too low from the criticism. And that's a real thing. When something is getting a high level of volume of response, it's probably best not to check comments. It's probably best not to engage with it a bunch, because that can be dangerous, like we've seen for so many people, for your mental health to engage and stuff like that. But it's also, there is a toll that comes with that, and stuff flopping and things like that. It can be hard to stomach those sorts of things. I mean, when City of God flopped because of so many different reasons, I'd put so much of my heart into that project, and it took me out for 3 to 6 months or something like that after it. I just was not in a headspace to make work after that, because I had poured so much in it, and the fall was so heavy. But there's a quote by author, theologian named C.S. Lewis, where he talks about to love at all is to be vulnerable. And he basically talks about how you can not experience pain. You can harden your heart and put it in a box and protect it. Like, you can protect your heart and put all these barriers around it from it ever getting any sort of harm done to it or any sort of pain. But in that box, it's going to become hardened and untouchable and ultimately just stone cold, basically. And so in order to truly love, in order to truly interact, in order to truly experience life to the full, you have to be vulnerable. You have to put yourself up to the potential to be hurt. Again, it's, if you take a position on something, if you put something out there, if you make yourself vulnerable to the world, you just got to do your best. You got to stand 10 toes down on the things that are true, but you also got to be open to valid critique if it comes your way. Take those things in humility and build from there, because it's all a growing process. And do more, do better the next time. And that's it, y'all. Episode 7 coming up soon. I'll catch you on the flip. Be easy, be safe. Peace.